Hello, my name is Shovia Muchirahando, and I am going through the second phase of my research, which my focus is on reparations based on my burning question. Why is it that America cannot provide reparations for African Americans and their descendants from slavery? This is an assignment due for May 3rd. I would like to begin. The direction that I took my research project in will now focus on the cycle of socialization and how socialization impacts white communities and their attitudes towards reparations. This is my way of narrowing my project down. I would like to begin by letting you know that from what I have observed, you cannot talk about socialization of whites and attitudes towards reparations without understanding clearly what is the definition of white, which is the birth of the cycle. Extracted from Media YouTube video, one of my main sources is The Invention of Whiteness by Dr. John Powell. He states, when we come to America, the elites organize people to extract resources from them. But the whites was not a part of the elites, and they was upset because they did not have the same wealth and saw that there was nothing that made a difference between the non-whites and felt no sense of privileged status. So this calls what we call the Bacon Rebellion. I have put a short link here through YouTube so you can watch just a short educational piece of the Bacon Rebellion. The elites responded, telling the newly minted whites that they should identify with the elites along with new identity entitled The Whites and Control of the Non-Whites. Now, I go on because I think that understanding and having definition and a historical perspective to get into this discussion is something that is very important that we must have. I start with the whites are defined as not black, and blackness was looked upon as scary and the threat to whites. So whites categorized whites and gave a sense of privilege in the name of itself. To ask one white to be black or just for a day, he or she will tell you or refuse unconsciously as well as consciously understanding what ramifications that is of being black. Also on the level of empathy, there was no development of empathy. The validation for blacks are not equal and 3/4 of a human justified using Christianity, race structural policies. In 1994, the publication The Bell Curve by Charles Murray, which talks about intelligence and class structure, conveyed to the whites that their privilege was on the chopping block. And due to immigration and integration, the people of their ethnicities and social trust outside of the white population was all at a threat. Therefore, reparations would erase this white privilege completely. So, the mole of socialization learning of being white negatively impacts us today and maintain the superiority complex for many. The possibility of reparation raises the fear of equality and equity in coexistence of blacks and whites unifying, which I would like to add would disrupt the elites' ruling class of ruling over us and maintaining their status as the elites. The unification would be, like I said, a threat to white privilege, and therefore many whites fight against, and this is why a lot of whites fight against unification, because of the fear of losing their status. So the impact on white communities was if blacks move in, their neighborhoods and communities would tarnish because of the socialized beliefs that black is scary, as I mentioned earlier in our definition and how we're defined in America. The thought about equity, diversity, and inclusivity is a threat to white privilege of being just white. In every aspect, our institutions and organizations of today, to try to undo the division brings terrorism and death to black people. The continuous fight can be shown in our statistics. So I went on and gathered up some statistical analysis. I began with the socialization impact of white communities and the resistance, according to an article written by Pete Morgan for the YouGov 2014 issue entitled Overwhelming Opposition to Reparations for Slavery and Jim Crow. This article points out white Americans are at 51% say that slavery is not a factor at all in the lower average wealth of black Americans. 14% Americans agree with among black Americans attitudes are turned on their heads. Now, 48% that slavery is a major, 48% feels that slavery is a major factor in their lower wealth levels today. And 14% of white Americans agree with Morgan. I would like to move further on with the impact of socialization on the community. And I've come up with, based on what I've been able to pull from various readings and various sources, is that in America, we all have been socialized not to see the disparities of privileges that is impeded on us due to the color of our skin, specifically the African Americans. All of the other ethnic and cultural groups are accepted to create an enclave of support system, but for African Americans, we have always been separated by laws such as Black Codes, Jim Crow, mass incarceration, or by terrorism acts such as Black Wall Street, consistently lynching of black business owners to support the stereotypes that keep whites and blacks separated due to the belief that we are hardworking and have good work ethics, etc. In addition, this cultivates the attitude to be against reparations. And I would like to add, because people will think, oh, well, what are they going to do? Oh, they're not lazy. But if you don't see our accomplishments, and every time we accomplish something and it's destroyed, well, that's kind of makes a self-fulfilling prophecy, view to you fulfilling stereotypes of what society has led you to believe, not based upon built relationships. Now, I would like to discuss whites' attitudes and what they're built on, and the manifestation of superiority. America carries a legacy of white supremacy. There is an innate entitlement that comes with being white from the day of birth here in America. Now, America has yet to deal with race without the overshadowing of diversity oppressions. We even live in a country that sometimes does not know that there's a difference between diversity and ethnicity when talking about the subject of racism and African Americans. Our issue is also overlapped and never allowed to be reviewed within its own context of experience. Whites are not necessarily ready to deal with their white fragility, nor are they ready to be uncomfortable and deal with the psychological effects of racism and their self-reflection that it will bring. America has to go through a transformation, and that has to start with acknowledgement. This transformation is not a race, it's a marathon, and equity, equality, and inclusion is bound to follow. And moving on to the next slide, I would like to talk about the resources to test attitudes of white America that tends to be looked upon and can be further looked as a great research tool. It's called the Gallup. The Gallup polls social studies. Their mission is to create extraordinary impact through analytics and advice. Gallup operates in 30 regional city centers, and they all collect data from over 160 countries. As for the United States and on subject of slave reparations. The reason I used this resource was to eliminate as much as bipartisanism if possible. Although, as African Americans, the perception of us is very much indoctrinated within and beyond America throughout all media outlets, if told, from many outside of our culture box. I would like to move on and inform you the sides of the effects of negative attitudes that white carry. Black Americans also clearly believe that government action should be taken to help bring out change. Over 7 to 10 blocks of favor affirmative action programs for racial minorities in this country, and the majority, 57% of whites, agree. Now, previous Gallup research has shown that about 2/3 of blacks believe in U.S. government and should play a major role in trying to improve the social and economic position of blacks and other minority groups in the country. Over 7 in 10 blacks believe that new civil rights laws are needed in the country to reduce discrimination against blacks. Now, shaping the white attitudes beyond data, I would like to say that attitudes of whites in America was nurtured since slavery. It has been taught and threaded through the education systems. In the building of America's slavery, it was fueled and made our economy successful and strong. Please feel free to review the quick education on issue. I have it right here on YouTube, a short YouTube video. I would like to share my point of references with you. Please feel free, if you need to go any further into depth to see what I am talking about, please feel free to use these references. Thank you for your time. The end.